Tauros, the wild bull Pokemon, is wholly considered to be the best Pokemon in all of red, blue, and yellow. And while that isn't explicitly true, Tauros is still considered the best in fair competitive play. Surprisingly, it's actually considered to be low tier in-game. That's mostly due to its late availability, overall rarity, and exclusivity to the Safari Zone. But what if you could start with a Tauros? Let's see if you can beat Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow with Tauros Only.
A Pokemon Go! Go!
So you want to be a Pokemon master?
Okay, here are the rules for this run. I can only use Tauros in battle. I can catch as many Pokemon as I want, and I can use them for HMs, but Tauros is the only one that can fight. No items in battle, no glitches or exploits, and finally, no cheat codes other than the Pokemon randomizer to put Tauros in as a starter. Simple as that. Ready? Let's begin our Pokemon Challenge journey. We'll load up the game and make a name for ourselves, literally. I elect to name my character Montana. My rival is going to be named Baloney. Baloney is spelled wrong purposely, but if you get this obscure TV reference, then list it in the comments down below. Obviously, we'll be starting our journey in Pallet Town. This is slightly less familiar than the Pallet Town I grew up in since I played yellow and not red and blue. But it works out the same. We run into the grass, Professor Oak stops us, then drags us back to his lab. There we get to pick our starter Pokemon. This time we pick Tauros. Tauros is an incredibly powerful Pokemon. He has a massive attack stat, stab normal moves, incredible speed, and a pretty decent moveset. But because this is way too early to catch a Tauros, we won't see many new moves. Also, another issue with Tauros is that it's got an incredibly shallow level up move pool. But I think the muscle associated with this Pokemon will mitigate some of that challenge and make this playthrough a little more interesting. I replaced Charmander given that Tauros will likely have a very similar matchup throughout the run. Also, Blastoise has the best defense of the trio, and therefore will be the toughest for Tauros to beat once it's fully evolved. We nickname our Tauros Cowboys. If you haven't guessed the theme name for this challenge, pause the video and do a Google search, because you're missing out. This leads right into our rival battle. Baloney picks Squirtle and tries to lay the hurt on Cowboys. It doesn't go very well for him. So we stroll on past that bull and take it to Vermilion City. We pick up Professor Oak's parcel in exchange for the Pokedex as usual. This will speed things along. From there, we start our Professor Oak challenge that, once again, we won't be focused on. Instead, we will travel west of Viridian and run into old Mayor Baloney. He's been rejected at the Pokemon League gate for being a low-level trainer. Then he challenges us to a Pokemon battle to raise his shattered self-esteem. This is surprisingly close. Pidgey lands a cheeky sand attack right away and we miss out on a range, meaning we need a 4-hit KO to beat Pidgey. We do the same thing with Squirtle. He hits us with a bubble, but then decides to use Tackle exclusively. This and the final Tail Whip seal his fate. I think the rival could have beaten us there. If I played it again at level 7, I might have lost. Baloney doesn't like losing and tells us off. We do the exact opposite of what he says and checks out the Pokemon League anyway. Turns out having a Tauros is not the same as having a Boulder Badge, so we go to get a Boulder Badge in Pewter City. We start this part of our journey by traveling through the Viridian Forest, and we battle every bug catcher that we can find to rack up the experience points. We're slightly delayed because I didn't buy any antidotes and Weedles are everywhere. Otherwise, no issues in the forest. And even getting to the gym was no problem. Once again, the pain of a solo Pokemon run is felt in earnest because Sand Attack is a prevalent early game move, and it almost makes me lose to Junior Trainer Buzz Lightyear. Undeterred, I move on to face Brock. Now you've probably watched up to this point thinking, Tauros is amazing, how is this a challenge run? Well, here's the challenge. I'm facing Geodude and Onix. They both resist normal type attacks. And in addition, Geodude spams defense curls until it can't anymore, making its already absurd defense utterly unbreakable. And this wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't relegated only to Tackle. You see, Tauros is stuck with Tackle in Gen 1 until level 21. The good news is, Tauros has good stats and gets same type attack bonus or a stab multiplier on his moves. But Tackle isn't much of a move, and it won't help us defeat Brock. Back to the forest to train. We give it another go at level 15 and have some mild success against Geodude. There's still no strategy here, you can only spam Tackle. I considered a different strategy here with Struggle. Struggle is stronger than Tackle here, but the recoil is just too much for Cowboys to ride out, meaning we're forced to go back to the Viridian Forest until Tauros is level 18. Tackle is still our only attack, but I've done the calculation. We should have just enough HP to beat Brock with struggle only. I try a tackle only run first. We get one of Tauros' many critical hits to start the battle off, and manage to wear Geodude down, with most of our health left to boot. Onix focuses primarily on status moves for the first half of the battle, in hopes of lowering my surprisingly good defenses. Then, realizing I can only tackle, he goes into Bide. Bide cuts my own HP down to half, but that isn't enough to stop this raging bull. Cowboys grants us the win. We take the Bide TM from Brock in addition to the Boulder Badge as part of our reward. Then we charge straight towards Mount Moon. Well, after a quick break at the Pokemon Center in Pewter City, of course. I also teach Cowboys Bide in hopes of having a weapon to use against Rock-type Pokemon, until I can track down a water move I can use. The Route 4 trainers are of little consequence, as Cowboys is radically overleveled and has overwhelming stats for this part of the game, so mowing them down is no challenge. At Mount Moon proper, we have a pretty easy time as well. I skip past most of the battles and avoid as many Zubat as I can afford to. I'm trying to conserve tackle power points to minimize trips to the Pokemon Center. While I'm here, I do find a good application for Bide. Aside from finding a neutral way to damage Rock-type Pokemon, Bide also serves as a way to weaken Pokemon of any level. I won't be using these Pokemon in battle, of course, but I do need HM Pokemon. Tauros already suffers from 4 move slot syndrome in this game. Paris is going to be our HM01 cut user. We wipe the floor with every trainer we see, including the super nerd guarding the fossil. Nobody really said much about the fossil last time, they just assumed I'd pick the Helix fossil. So this time I'm just going to reveal the fact that I grabbed a Helix fossil. But sure, comment what you think I got anyway. Comments are good about the algorithm, yada yada yada. Anyway, we arrive safely at Vermilion City. There we meet Baloney once again. This time he's packing a team of 4 Pokemon to face off against our 1. Pidgeot comes in as his lead, and falls easily to our new move in Stomp. Usually he leads off with a Sand Attack, but I guess Quick Attack was optimal this time. Abra's next, but doesn't stand a chance against the well-placed Tackle. Rattata fares the same, and poor Squirtle suffers a critical hit. We move on to Nugget Bridge and breeze through all the trainers. They tried their best though, and have no regrets. The Team Rocket member who offers us a Nugget won't be so lucky. He messes with the bull, and, of course, gets the horns. Or the hoof in this case. Being a yellow veteran, I'm actually disappointed to find that there's no Charmander on this route over here, just the useless TM45. It's no help against Misty. Doesn't matter though, we make it down to Bill's house and get him out of his Dexter's Lab-esque experiment. As a reward, we earn the SS ticket. Back in town, we choose to take on the tomboyish mermaid herself. The gym trainers offer no resistance to our well-trained Tauros. So Cowboys is ready to face off against Martial Misty. Staryu doesn't last long against a Stab Stomp attack, and Starmie doesn't fare much better. Starmie's defenses, surprisingly, are good enough to tank a hit, but it wastes the opportunity to capitalize on a relatively low special stat in Tauros. For our win, Misty rewards us with a Cascade Badge and the Bubble Beam TM. To my dismay though, TM11 is useless to me, meaning I don't have an efficient way to deal with the plentiful Rock-type Pokemon in the Kanto region, yet. Well, Tauros is known for being a master of Ground-type moves like Fissure and Earthquake, so let's go for Dig. The battle with the rocket behind the house is easy, and we recover the Dig TM shortly after the encounter begins. Sadly, this move also isn't compatible with Tauros, so instead we give it to Paris, effectively giving it 2 jobs now. On the way to Vermilion City, I snag a Pidgey for the move Fly. Once we get to Vermilion, it's time for a quick stop at the Pokemon Fan Club, because I want to hear about Ponyta. I also grabbed a fishing rod from the fishing guru, but because it's been so long, I forgot you can only fish up Magikarp with the old rod. I catch one anyway, but then I remember I won't be using any other Pokemon in battle, even a Switch Train, so this Magikarp won't end up as Gyarados with Surf. And into the PC it goes. Anyway, we end up on the SSN in Bill's place. We find a couple decent TMs, including Body Slam. This is our new main stab move. It's got an 85 base power multiplied by 1.5 because we're also normal type. This really puts a hurt on the rest of the passengers and the crew of the SSN. But before we can leave, it's time to visit a friend. Baloney is still under the delusion that he's tougher than we are, So we leave it up to Montana to put the moves on his team. It's largely an uneventful fight. Raticate gets a decent hit off with Quick Attack, but none of his other Pokemon even touch us. It's at this point that I realize I don't really need to do any non-mandatory battles anymore. We grab the cut HM for good measure, then we storm Vermilion City Gym. The gym puzzle is short and simple. We knock out the electrical locks and move on to face Lieutenant Surge. Cowboys is way overleveled for this gym. It's also at this point that I remember the gym leaders in red and blue are weaker than the ones in yellow once you get past Misty. It's a literal stomp. Like, I just click Stomp and beat Pikachu, Voltorb, and Raichu. It was a little underwhelming compared to that monster of a level 28 Raichu from Yellow that we had to fight last week with Pikachu. Since there's no moratorium on catching Pokemon in this challenge, I decided to catch a few more in addition to my HM Masters just to max out my Pokedex. This awarded me with the Flash HM and a much faster way through Rock Tunnel. It also offered me a final use for the move Bite in catching the remaining Pokemon. It's worth noting that this strategy is completely useless on Zubats, by the way, but Zubat is next to useless anyway, so no sweat here. We rushed across the fields to Rock Tunnel, skipping through as many fights as I can since Cowboys is getting dangerously overleveled and they're getting very easy, even for a Pokemon game. No major challenges in the tunnel, even the obligatory Hiker with his 3 rock types fell in almost an instant to Cowboys. I spam stomps hoping for flinches. It did a surprising amount of damage still though, and ultimately Graveler self-destructed on us twice. I've seen weaker Pokemon survive this Graveler self-destruct though, so my concerns were minimal. Eventually, Cowboys and I arrived in Lavender Town. I was a little concerned since Lavender Town is known for the Ghastly line, and I didn't want the challenge to end here. So I just went across the road to Celadon City instead. There we took on Team Rocket in their hideout. The battles were swift, and we were able to gather a lot of treasure in the city of Celadon. Principal among them was the TM for the move Ice Beam. That, combined with the Thunderbolt TM from Lieutenant Surge, finally offered us the much sought after Bolt Beam coverage that we'd need to progress through the rest of the game. Our favorite Cowboy demolished the Rockets and left Giovanni in the dust, meaning that Erica was the only challenge left in town. The gift of good TMs is not lost on us here as Tauros charges through Erica's defensive line. The Bovine beatdown didn't stop there though. Granted, Erica is much more powerful than her students, and she caught us early in a dreaded Gen 1 sleep combo and attempted to wrap us to death. Luckily, we wake up very early and wrap doesn't last long, so down goes Victory Bell. Tangela suffers the same fate with a single Ice Beam to the face, but Vileplume doesn't go down so easy. It tried to gain some momentum with a healing move, but it isn't enough to stop this bull from mowing the lawn. Now that we have some attacks that actually damage ghosts, we can finally go to Lavender Town. Cowboys is incredibly overleveled, so I ready to repel to slip my way through the game. I had entirely forgotten that Baloney the rival was still here, with his Pokemon largely still being first stage or a Route 1 bird Pokemon, sorry Firo. Either way, the battle was nothing to write home about. Marowak was mildly more interesting. In fact, she's got some solid defenses that tanked a full-on body slam from Cowboys, despite the fact that he's 10 levels higher and gets stab on body slam. Body slam was a clean 2-hit KO regardless, so we cruised straight up to face off with Team Rocket. Fighting the Rockets is more tedious than anything really. You have to fight 3 of them, all in the mid-20s for level. I feel like the way this is designed, you're probably supposed to hit the tower before you go to Celadon City, otherwise you'll be overleveled no matter what. Not that it would matter with a Tauros anyway. After his rescue, Mr. Fuji gives us a lovely Poke-Flute. I decide to thank Silphco personally for developing the Poke-Flute, when I discover that Team Rocket has attacked and taken over. Tauros is still very overleveled, and this is usually a point in the game where I'd normally just grind up my Pokemon to higher levels, so I skipped most of the fights with the intention of picking up items later. I focused on picking up a rare candy and TM26 for Cowboys. For those of you who don't know, TM26 contains Earthquake. You know what our plan is here. So Cowboys and I skip a couple of Rockets and Scientists to pick up the card key. Then we head straight to Baloney for the 5th rival battle. Since we're closer in levels, I expected this to be a bit more difficult. Cowboy skewers Pidgeot and Growlithe right away. Execute doesn't last long against us either, and Alakazam goes down to 1 stomp. So that leaves us with Blastoise, who's capable of tanking a Thunderbolt, which is good to know. He doesn't last longer than that. So, needless to say, after a win, old rival Fievel goes west, probably never to be seen again. As a reward for beating Baloney, we get the Surf Master Lapras. Then comes the penultimate battle with Giovanni, where, once again, a Mafia Don has challenged an 11-year-old boy to a death battle with several large monsters. Kangaskhan and Nidorino were of almost no consequence, and Rhyhorn went down easily to an Ice Beam. Nidoqueen, on the other hand, was not so cooperative. She lands a solid Poison Sting that resulted in us being poisoned, but another solid Ice Beam from Cowboys puts her down. From there, we teleport straight into Sabrina's gym. The Saffron City gym leader, of course, specializes in Psychic Pokemon. On any other challenge run, I might be a little worried, but this time I'm not terribly concerned. In Generation 1, Psychic Pokemon have notoriously weak physical defenses, so a few well-placed stomps and body slams are all it'll take, I'm certain. Sabrina opens up with Kadabra per usual, who falls to a single stomp. I was planning on Stomp mainly to fish for flinches in the event that I missed out on a one-hit KO. Body Slam also seemed to do the job nicely, and there wasn't a single Pokemon on her team that stood a chance. We heal up, then get on the bike to go to Cycling Road. But then I remember Fighting Dojo is a thing, and I decided I have to challenge it. There I learned that Tauros special stat isn't all it's cracked up to be, since my Thunderbolt still can't one-hit KO a Primeape with a 7-level advantage. Tauros normal moves, however, are once again all physical, and once again all get stab, so outside of rock and ghost types, it's a non-factor going forward. I did take advantage of the Hitmon's weak special stats though, and took a Hitmon for ourselves. This time we picked Hitmonlee. Why? Well, go check out our Pokemon Yellow video for the reasoning this time. Or just ask why in the comments section, because comments something something, YouTube something something, algorithm something something. We snatched up the Fly HM for our Fly Master, then shooed Snorlax back up to the mountains. And finally, we double timed it down to Fuchsia City. This is where I finally decided to put my strategy into play against Koga. It was Earthquake time. Now for the record, you can get TM26 without fighting the rocket guarding it, it's just more fun to fight the mobsters. Koga's very odd non-poison using apprentices were annoying at worst. I think I only hit 2 of them and didn't do much else, leaving only Koga left. Coughing was our first opponent, and it caught an Earthquake to the face. We dropped another one on Muck, and then followed up with Coughing again, and finally finished off Wheezing. I was hoping I'd get hit at least once, but Earthquake's natural power, combined with it being super effective, and ultimately Tauros' attack stat, was too much even for the naturally beefy Wheezing. Life gets interesting in the Safari Zone. I found myself stumbling through, picking apart items, and tossing TMs to make sure I had enough space for the gold teeth and surf, all the while pumping Cowboys up even further with whatever vitamins I could find on the way. Also, I noticed that the park ranger said I was the first one to get the fabulous prize, so now I have to wonder, how does the rival get to Cinnabar Island and beat the gym before you do? Does he just zip in there very quickly after you do, then crank up his Pokemon like a motorboat to get there and back, just so he can post up in front of the Pokemon League gate? How fast is this guy? Now that said, we took the express route from Pallet Town down to Cinnabar Island, and then to the Key in Cinnabar Mansion. From there, we decided to hit all the gym answers correctly, and since I don't have 5 other Pokemon to evenly train this time, we were able to skip through battling the other trainers. Our battle with Blaine himself was pretty uneventful. A Tauros in his mid-40s can easily defeat any and all of Blaine's Pokemon with an Earthquake. Even his ace, Arcanine, was only able to take 1 Earthquake to the face. And while Fire Blast did substantial damage, it was not enough to stop the Stampede. We gather the Volcano Badge and the associated TM Fire Blast before flying off to the Vermilion City Gym. And even in the biggest plot twist of the game, not only is Vermilion City Gym open, it's actually led by the evil Giovanni. And yes, for those of you in the back in 1998, this was a huge plot twist. Giovanni was an evil boss character, and the gym leaders were teachers who were all basically good guys. The anime hadn't gotten that far in the States yet, and we didn't have the Pokemon Adventures manga either. So it was insane to those of us playing at the time that Giovanni was also a gym leader. But I've stalled you enough on trips down memory lane. Let's get back to the battle now. I've done absolutely no training in between these challenges, so Giovanni is going to be a real tough customer. We start off by exploiting Rhyhorn's weak special stat with success, and then use the same tactic on Dugtrio. Its pitiful HP is another boon that gets us through. Nidoqueen is stronger, so an Earthquake is the ticket that takes it out. We follow the same formula for Nidoking and achieve success. The only question is, right on. Ice Beam doesn't do the job, but Giovanni doesn't counterattack, leaving us open to finish the gym challenge with a single Earthquake. So with that, we get ready for the endgame, the final challenge, the Elite Four. But before we do that, we, of course, need to face our rival, Baloney, yet again. Pidgeot comes up first, but he can't stand up to a Thunderbolt. Baloney gets a lucky crit with Quick Attack before we finish his Pidgeot off with yet another Bolt. Rhyhorn gets the same treatment as Giovanni's and actually goes down like a circus clown. Growlithe, for some inexplicable reason, has yet to evolve and can't survive an Earthquake, nor can execute when it's faced with an Ice Beam. Body Slam absolutely crushes Alakazam, meaning we just need to survive whatever Blastoise fires at us, since even a critical Thunderbolt doesn't one-shot him. Hydro Pump puts us in range for a KO, and a crit might have worked us over. So with that narrow win, we go on to the Pokemon League. We take the Pokemon League challenge at level 50, because I'm feeling confident. After all, we did it with pre-evolves and did just fine. Anyway, first up is Lorelei. Tauros Thunderbolt is effective, and it's able to bring down Dugong in 2 hits. Cloyster, who still has a decent special stat in this game, survives the first Thunderbolt and smashes us with a Spike Cannon. We survive both hits and get another Bolt off. We fire off a Body Slam since we know that Slowbro carries Amnesia, and it has much better special stats. Jinx is also vulnerable to Body Slams, and that's exactly what happened. With a little extra muscle from a level up, we try to hit Lapras with a few Thunderbolts, but to no avail. Lorelei presses her advantage with a Hydro Pump that quickly evens the playing field, but it's not enough to resist a final attack. Bruno, I'd venture to say, is even easier to beat than Lorelei. Ice Beams, Thunderbolts, and Paralysis abounds early on as I try to take advantage of Bruno's Pokemon and their low special stats. The Hitmons don't last long, as even Hitmonlee goes down to a single Body Slam, and there's not an Onix in the galaxy that can survive any sort of Ice Beam. Body Slam adds more paralyzed Pokemon to our count, and positions us to knock it out with our next Earthquake. Speaking of Earthquakes, the Agatha lottery gets shaken down by our bull like it was in a china shop. Gengar can't handle an Earthquake to the face. Golbat does get the jump on Cowboys, but not before undoing their own confusion by using Haze, letting me continue the sweep. Haunter and Arbok are both forgettable, and finally Gengar does put some pressure on with a direct hit on Confuse Ray. Sadly, it continues to fire off Confuse Rays and outspeeds Tauros. Agatha has me on the ropes after a Nightshade, leaving me in KO range, but she opts to use Toxic instead, just handing me the win. Just leaving Lance for last. Lance prepped well, leading off with Gyarados. My Thunderbolts, while quadruple effective, is not a one-hit KO on Gyarados. Sadly, a critical hit Hydro Pump was, and I was out of the race. That's all she wrote. Wow, this is my first real loss of the game. I mean, I guess technically there was the Brock one too, but those were kind of test runs. This was pretty intense. I mean, I guess if I'm going to lose to any NPC, Lance is pretty much the one to lose to. Fun fact, I had the same problem the first time I played Pokemon at the end of Yellow too, because I only used Pikachu in the starters. None of our stab moves were effective against Lance's dragons. With that said, I had to make a choice. Do I grind up Tauros for a guaranteed win, or do I fight off the bad luck? I decided to shrug off the bad luck and give the Elite a little bit more heat. The second battle with Lorelei went about as well as the first. Dugong did some serious damage with Takedown, putting me at a disadvantage. Cloyster did the same, trapping me in a critical clamp this time around, and it beat me straight up, forcing me to restart yet again. I figured the third time is the charm and decided to stick with the level 50 Cowboys the Tauros. This time was different, as I opened with a misclick Ice Beam. Dugong followed up with a Growl, allowing me to regain control with a storm of Thunderbolts. Even resting didn't help Dugong regain momentum. Cloyster suffered a 1 in 5 critical hit Thunderbolt. I thought I'd mix it up against Slowbro, favoring Thunderbolt this time. As it turned out, it actually does more damage. After he boosted his special though, I gave up on Thunderbolt in favor of stab body slams. I'm rewarded with a paralysis, leaving me free to slam Slowbro. Jinx, to my surprise, survives a body slam and responds with one of her own. So it turns out, without a critical hit, that's a 2-hit KO. No time to contemplate that now, Lapras is up last. I let loose a body slam and luckily paralyze another one of Lorelei's Pokemon. It takes 2 more Thunderbolts, including a critical hit, to finish the job. And that's not before we take a blizzard to the face to remind us of just how vulnerable we are, even using Tauros. Bruno is our next target, and his Onix still can't stand an Ice Beam. As it turns out, it takes 2 of them to beat Hitmonchan. Hitmonlee's beefy defenses keep it out of Oko range, but it isn't enough to avoid a 2-hit KO either. And finally, Machamp is here. Without a super effective move to use, we just rely on heavy body slams and the recoil from submission to win the match cleanly. Agatha heads up the 3rd round of the finale. I go back to the Earthquake strategy for a clean knockout on Gengar, and then focus on Golbat with Thunderbolts. Golbat gives us a free turn with Haze that we promptly turn into a KO. More Earthquakes decimated Arbok and Haunter, including a crit on Arbok, and yes, that crit did matter. Another thing that mattered was Gengar giving us a free turn, since after successfully confusing Cowboys, it wasn't too much more trouble. As a result, we took a level 53 Tauros into the fight against Lance. I restored some power points on Body Slam before challenging the leader of the Elite Four. Gyarados counters my Thunderbolt with a Dragon Rage this time. Still solid damage, but it sure beats a Hydro Pump to the face. This leads me to moving into my strategy, which is just smothering anything that Lance has to offer with an Ice Beam. It doesn't work on the first Dragonair, so I tried Body Slam, which does offer as much damage and a paralysis. Aerodactyl has the speed advantage and tanks one of the Thunderbolts, but doesn't follow up very well, resulting in another Thunderbolt knockout. With Dragonite, we fire off a final Ice Beam hoping for a freeze. It doesn't work. But Dragonite can only think to counter with a barrier and not with its signature Hyper Beam. This frees us up to use a final Ice Beam to win the match. That means we're on to the final battle. Here's our stat spread. Level 54 with the potential to hit 55 mid-battle. Our speed and attack are blinding, so I think we can easily beat any member of the rivals team one-on-one. But with such a level disadvantage, I question our ability to sweep. If I lose here, I may pour on a few rare candies, which is a shame because I really wanted to use this Pokemon in Stadium. Do you think we have this one? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. So this is it, the final battle. Pidgeot is up first, with a 7-level advantage. It's able to survive a Thunderbolt and follows up with Sky Attack, giving me an easy KO. Alakazam is Pidgeot's follow-up, which is no challenge. Luckily, I outspeed it and take it down with a Body Slam. Rhydon, however, is too bulky for an Ice Beam to do the job. Gosh, I wish Tauros could learn Surf sometimes. Either way, we get past it and try Earthquake on Arcanine. It lands, but Arcanine damages the both of us with a takedown. Cowboys is still in good health and even levels up in the process. I think these extra stats can help us. Executor is up and catches an Ice Beam as soon as it exits the Pokeball. Barrage is just a wasted turn, but Baloney makes up for it with a full restore. We exchange powerful moves, ultimately ending in another Ice Beam. And now, with Cowboys worn down and at a 10-level disadvantage, we face Blastoise, a far cry from the position we were in when we got Tauros and battled Baloney when he had just received Squirtle. Now Blastoise holds the advantage. Even a critical hit Thunderbolt doesn't do the job, and a Hydro Pump will seal our fate. Or it would, except that we got one last stroke of luck. Blastoise is paralyzed and loses a turn, giving us a chance to fire off a final Thunderbolt and win the game. And that's it, the battle is over and the champion has been decided. As it turns out, you can beat Pokemon Red with just a Tauros, and one within Pokemon Cup / Nintendo Cup rules at that. Now, if I was a speedrunner, I think this challenge would have been over way faster. Tauros is incredibly powerful and probably way too good for a challenge like this. Even without items in battle, most of the strategies didn't go beyond spamming Body Slam. I feel like with the starters I had to rely on my wits a whole lot more, especially since they had much lower stats and even lower levels than Tauros. In fact, once you get past Brock at the start, it's easy street until the Elite Four. I bet if I started with a level 55 Tauros at Lorelei, then this wouldn't have taken any time at all. Now, this was a fun playthrough for sure, but I probably wouldn't do it again. Having a powerhouse like this early in game legitimately feels unfair, even though most of the TMs it uses you can't get until mid-game. But once you get Bolt Beam coverage, it's a wrap. I bet in a casual playthrough you could easily finish this in less than 5 hours, and a proper speedrunner could probably do it in 2 or 3. But as you can see, the Elite Four's more complex AI and overall stronger Pokemon served to be quite the challenge. Oddly, I still had a lot of fun doing this run. It fulfilled a little bit of a power fantasy to dominate an unfamiliar game so easily, and I hope to use Tauros again in the near future, perhaps in another Pokemon game. But until then, this is Battlemaster Ace, signing out.